If you are in that community, good fucking luck getting out.
Right.
Good luck. The money that you get other than welfare is from selling pills. You know, everybody's on these pills, so you're all whacked out. You don't know what the fuck is going on half the day. You're on opiates. I mean, it is a bananas environment. And there's a lot of people like that in this country.
For sure.
In poor Latino communities, in poor white communities, in poor black communities. The idea that these people are just going to pull themselves up by their bootstraps is crazy. I just think they don't have a plan. And I think if we really want to help them, there's got to be some way where you can give these people the opportunity to step out of that pattern. Whatever that,
For sure.
Community centers, outreach programs, whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
I mean, the truth is that historically speaking, it was people actually going to church.
Yes.
I mean, and there's
a lot of good. I'm not a church-going person,
right.
But I absolutely recognize that there's a lot of good involved in having that framework.
Right, and that I'm not sure that's. I don't think you can create sort of a fake social fabric with just a government welfare system. Like it hasn't worked. I mean, disability exists. It's been increasing every year. It's not. It's a question I asked Andrew Yang, actually. So our episode comes out on Sunday, and obviously Andrew is a big fan of UBI, Universal Basic Income. And I'm not averse to the idea of UBI in a future where legitimately 50% of the population can't work because they've all been automated out of existence and all of this. But there's one section in his book where Andrew talks about how if we cut people a check for UBI, then they will spend their extra time creating art and engaging in hobbies that they like. And I just thought to myself, I mean, I said it to him, like, people are on disability. That ain't what they're doing. Right? I mean, if you're on disability, the people you're talking about who are suffering, they're not out there writing poetry. Right? I mean, the rise of the opioid epidemic and people who are ODing on drugs and all this stuff, that's in precisely the same demographic you're talking about. You're just talking about a check from one place as opposed to another place. I don't really see how that solves the problem. I think we have a crisis of purpose right now, and I don't think that crisis of purpose is solvable on the one hand by changing our trade rules, and I also don't think that crisis of purpose is solvable by cutting a government check. I just don't think that that's how people are wired.
I absolutely agree with you that there is a crisis of purpose. My concern is about automation, and my concern, and obviously I haven't really studied this other than talking to Andrew Yang and talking to Elon Musk and a few other people that are proponents of universal basic income. They think that there's going to be such a massive loss of jobs in such a short period of time from people that are non-skilled laborers, and it's going to go away. There's millions and millions of jobs, and these people are not going to have anything, and then it could be chaos.
Right. So there's two problems that come up there, and this is where Andrew's book is interesting, because problem number one is that the people will be poor. They won't have a source of income.
Yes.
UBI solves that. The other problem...
Sort of, but does it even? It gives them $1,000 a month.
Even if you upped it, right? I mean, even if you just had a Swedish redistribution system and the average tax rate went up to 60% or something. It might, let's say we could solve the money problem for a second, which, without tanking the economy, which is questionable. But let's say we could do that. We could add trillions of dollars to the budget every year, and we could solve that. I'm still not sure that solves the deeper problem, which is that when people lose jobs, they lose purpose.
Yes. Right.
So I'm not sure that UBI solves that problem.
It doesn't.
As I say, we have a rich social welfare network in the United States, and we're seeing this stuff happen anyway. I'm a little bit less catastrophic. By a little bit, I mean a fair bit less catastrophic in my thinking about automation than either Andrew Yang or Elon Musk.
Do you think that people will be able to adapt quick enough to avoid the problems? They'll realize the jobs aren't there anymore, and they'll just naturally gravitate towards other professions?
I think over time that people will do that, but they're not always the same people. I mean, there's always shift in the economy, and the ideal economic model has a trucker becoming a coder, right? But that's not reality.
Well, that was that whole learn to code fiasco that got people kicked off of Twitter.
Right. And it
still does, apparently.
Yeah, apparently if you say it to journalists, then that's very bad. If you say learn to code to a trucker, that's what it was. That's what it was.
If you say learn to code to a trucker?
If you say learn to code to a trucker, then that's just you being helpful.
Right.
If you say learn to code to a journalist, then that is targeted harassment on Twitter. That's where that started.
What if someone says it to me?
Well,
how does that work?
Twitter doesn't care about you. I can say whatever I want to you on Twitter. But I mean, I think that.
But if you just say it to a friend, hey, fuckface, learn to code.
I don't know. Is your friend going to report you to the censorship board over at Twitter?
It's such a dumb thing to take people out for. It's one of the best examples of like how censorship oversteps its boundaries and becomes almost like satire.
Yeah, it's really
the idea
absurd.
That, like, this is the biggest aggression ever. Learn to code.
Learn to code.
Like that's something like. This is a stupid thing that someone said about coal miners. They literally said that about coal miners, that maybe they can learn to code. And so everybody's like, what the fuck? And so learn to code became a joke and became something that you would mock people.
Right.
Their explanation for it was so crazy. It was like, no, then learn to code got connected with all this white supremacy and all this other stuff.
Well,
like,
that's the Hitler owned a dog
Yes,
argument, right?
exactly.
It's like dogs are bad. Hitler owned one. Okay, white
Yes.
supremacists are bad. They used the phrase learn to code. That means if you say learn to code, you're a white supremacist. Like, what the?
That's how they lost the frog, that fucking frog, the feels good man frog. That's what happened to Pepe. They lost him.
They killed the frog. They turned the freaking frog gay. I mean, what?
Yeah, it is. Oh, that's yeah.
But yeah, I mean, as far as automation, there's constantly people saying this is the Nicholas Nassim Taleb view of reality, which is that the black swan incident can happen any second, so watch out for it. Versus the sort of Steven Pinker view of reality, which is the black swan incident is called a black swan incident because it's a black swan incident, meaning that it happens incredibly rarely. The idea that we are on the verge of a catastrophic drop in job numbers because of the automation of trucking, for example, I'm not sure that I buy it. The reason I don't buy it is because you still are going to need someone sitting behind the wheel of that truck. There are human drivers on the road. There will be a gradual transition away from some of these jobs. Andrew Yang talks about radiologists and how radiologists are going to be priced out of the market by computers that can do a better job of diagnosing tumors. First of all, awesome, right? I mean, that's good. First of all, that brings down cost, and you won't get cancer as advanced. So that'd be a good thing. But second of all, what a lot of technology studies have tended to show is that technology just gets integrated in a different way in particular careers. So there will be jobs that are eliminated for sure. There will be jobs we haven't heard of that will be created also. And mostly technology will become more of a productivity aid to people. So this is true in factories. Jobs have been lost in factories. It's the best example of where jobs are lost, but it's mostly true in offices, right? How many office jobs have been created because you have computers? Would more office jobs exist because I write by hand?
Do you think that this is akin to like a government bailout? Like the idea of the government bailout was like the banks are too big to fail. And some people thought, you know what, you got to let them fail so you figure out why they failed and we'll never have it happen again. If there is this thing and the government steps in and says, wait a minute, I know you lost all your jobs, we're going to give you $1,000. You don't have to figure it out. $1,000 a month, and some people go, okay, I'm not going to figure it out now. Whereas those people might have gone on a fear-filled journey to try to figure out their purpose in life because now they're stuck where their job doesn't exist anymore, so they're put in a corner and they have to act.
There is enervation that comes from a welfare check. I mean, there are people who become dependent on government, and then they're used to being dependent on government. I mean, that stuff is true.
It does happen.
I mean, and listen, Milton Friedman made an argument for universal basic income as a replacement for the welfare system. There is another problem with universal basic income that I asked Andrew about also, and that was, one of the big issues is that poor people, very often, people who are permanently impoverished, not people who are temporarily poor, but they tend not to spend money where we think they ought to spend money. Right? They're not taking that money and they're not putting it into education or into
They might just be buying ho-hos and cigarettes.
Right. I mean, the average person who is making less than, I think it was $16,000 a year, is spending $400 a year on lottery tickets. Right? I mean, that's legitimately just flushing your money down the toilet. Yeah. So how do you? Aren't you just going to end up back in the same place? In 6 months, where people took that money and used it in ways that actually didn't benefit them. And at a certain point, the question is, do you own your decisions or do you not own your decisions? And at what level of incompetence or inability do we say you no longer own your decisions and so we're just going to take care of you on a permanent basis? That's really the question here, I think
we're looking at, when you're talking about welfare, we're looking at worst case scenario, right, where someone does get dependent upon the welfare state and does use that money frivolously and does make poor decisions. But then there's got to be other people that are single moms that, maybe had a kid with some fucking asshole that doesn't want to pay and is a piece of shit and they have to hide from them and they're just trying to feed their kids.
Yeah, sure.
Those people exist too.
100%.
And they don't have a community to help them out. Maybe they're not a part of a church. Maybe they don't have a good group of neighbors. Maybe they had to move somewhere for work and they got stuck in some place where they don't know anybody.
Sure. But I think part of this is to recognize that incentives matter on both ends. So the idea is that you give some people more money and they'll do well. It's also true that if you create a welfare system that benefits single motherhood, you will get more single motherhood. I mean, the single motherhood rate in the black community before welfare was 20%. Now it's 70%. In the white community, it was like 5%. Now it's 40%.
Now, you've said that like out of wedlock children and having a kid when you're young is like it's a terrible idea for your life. But what do you recommend to have kids avoid that? Are you one of those people that thinks
don't put it there without that thing on it?
No condoms, that's what you're saying.
Right? Like don't have unprotected sex. I mean, like this is not. It's not. Pardon my fake cursing. It's not effing rocket science. I mean, like
You're apologizing for not cursing.
I'm apologizing for not cursing. Yeah, it's not rocket science. This one
It's
always
not,
bothers
but
me.
kids make mistakes, and I mean that's what happens. People
Well, okay,
get
well,
pregnant.
and then if the government pays for those mistakes, it becomes less.
So what should happen? Should the kids suffer? Should the who?
No,
like,
I mean,
how should it be?
I mean,
how should it be worked out?
I mean, it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
You know, if there are parents available to the kid, presumably the grandparents would take a pretty active role in the raising
If they
of
can.
that kid.
Let's
Also,
assume they're there.
well, how about this? How about we assume that if you are old enough to get pregnant, then you are old enough to let's talk about a 17-year-old or 18-year-old. Used to be shotgun marriages were a thing. And really,
you
like,
think that's a good idea?
I think the idea of parents staying together for the sake of a kid that they accidentally bore is absolutely a good idea. Yes,
Yeah.
I think that is a better idea than the man walking away and the kid being without a man in the house.
So
for
you
the rest
think
of their
the
childhood.
parents
I know a lot
should
of people.
figure a way to work it out?
Yes.
And if they were both reasonable, they could do that.